Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Thank you for joining us this evening. As always, at the bottom of your screen, you have your best way to get a forecast outside of our show. You have that 1-800 number that's available 24 hours a day for your local forecast. Also, if you have internet access, you can visit us on the web at weather.gov/Alaska and get a forecast right down to your area for the next 7 days, as well as lots of other weather and climate information. And finally, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for us, feel free to email us anytime at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. We don't have any watches, warnings, or advisories in effect right now across the entire state, so we will go ahead and start talking about our satellite imagery. We can see a lot of high clouds across the mainland. So people are going to be getting a mix of of sun and clouds today. We can see that there's a lot less clouds over the panhandle today, so maybe even some peaks of sun there for a special treat. Same with the Aleutians, with possibly some sun breaks coming in for those in the Aleutians. And as we look at the west coast, we're also looking at mostly just some thin high clouds there, so maybe some sun breaks there as well. Taking a look at our surface chart for tonight, we have a weak low pressure system in the Gulf. That's bringing a trough up into the Alaska Peninsula. We also have a weak low over eastern Russia, which is bringing another trough down across the west coast. So between those two, we're going to have rain to the south and west of those two troughs and showers to the north and east of those troughs. In addition to the showers that are going to be over a lot of the mainland, particularly the western 2/3 really, we've got another low pressure system sitting over the Alaska-Canada border, and that's going to be helping to spark some possible thunderstorms this afternoon for the eastern interior. Generally that area north of the Wrangell Mountains up to about the Yukon River. Heading into tonight, that low pressure system in the Gulf continues to weaken, and it's actually pushing a little bit further south into tonight. So we still have a trough coming up from that into the Alaska Peninsula, bringing some more rain, and that rain is actually going to start spreading northeastward tonight a little bit into the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and maybe even into the Anchorage area. We'll continue to see some rain along the west coast, as well as showers across the northern interior. And then a weak low over eastern Russia, bringing a large trough down through the Bering and into the Aleutians for some rain there as well. Heading into Thursday, that low in the Gulf continues to weaken and push further south, so that's going to be less of an impact to our weather. But we'll continue to see some rain and showers over the western portion of the state. Some clearing, or I guess dryness, I should say, for the actual west coast itself, with that rain more relegated to a little bit further inland than what we expect for today. Troughing over the Bering Sea, bringing some more rain there all the way from St. Matthew Island up through St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait. And some showers potentially over the Panhandle on Thursday afternoon. Once again, we're seeing a trough over the eastern portion of the state with the border to Canada, where we're looking at some thunderstorms again on Thursday afternoon in that same area, kind of the Eagle area around where the Yukon River crosses the border into Canada. Finally, for Friday, we've got a couple of weak low pressure systems, nothing very strong. 1007 millibars in the St. Lawrence Island area, So we'll see some continuing rain and mixed with some fog for the west coast. Showers across the central interior as well as some of the eastern interior, but that forcing for thunderstorms looks like it'll lessen for Friday afternoon, so probably better chance for showers than thunderstorms for that eastern interior area. Also some weak low pressure over western Canada. That's going to be bringing some chance of showers Friday to the higher terrain of the Panhandle. Looking at temperatures for Thursday morning, we've got over southeast temperatures in the 40s, even some higher 30s. Our coldest spot for Thursday morning looks like it's going to be Yakutat at 38 degrees. For South Central, we're also looking at 40s, 47 there at Anchorage, 43 at Seward for Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, temperatures mostly in the 60s for South Central and the northern Panhandle. We've got cooler areas over the southern Panhandle as well as the Alaska Peninsula. So while we're looking at 63 for Anchorage, 66 for Talkeetna, just 54 degrees there for the central Panhandle and 53 for Kodiak. Friday morning, more of the same with temperatures generally in the 40s, a bit warmer at Yakutat there with 44 degrees, so a number of degrees warmer than what the expectation is for Thursday morning. And as we head into Friday afternoon, some additional warming for South Central with temperatures up into the mid to upper 60s and even 70s with 71 there at Talkeetna for Friday afternoon. Some cooling in the Panhandle though. Juneau looks like 59, whereas on Thursday looks like they're going to be more in the 60s, so a bit of a cooling trend for portions of the Panhandle on Friday. Looking at the northern side of the state for Thursday morning, we've got temperatures around or just above freezing for the North Slope, 32 there at AKwx. Same story for much of the west coast with temperatures around and just above freezing, 32 there in the Bering Strait area, 38 at Nome. But across the interior, much warmer as can be expected. Temperatures in the mid to upper 40s to around 50, 51 there for Thursday morning at Fairbanks. Thursday afternoon, warm but mild with our warmest temperature in the Yukon Flats, around 72 degrees at Fort Yukon. Temperatures along the North Slope ranging from the mid 30s to around 40 for the Chukchi Seacoast, and a bit warmer, mid 40s to around 50 for the Beaufort Coast. Cool again along the west coast in the Bering Strait area, upper 30s to around 40, 44 there at Nome, and some 60s for the interior. Friday morning, a little bit warmer for the North Slope, generally above freezing for Friday morning. Same for the West Coast with temperatures still in the 30s, but generally above freezing to about 40 degrees. And then for the interior, still looking at mid 40s to around 50 for Friday morning. Heading into Friday afternoon, a little bit of a warming trend with temperatures in the 40s to around 50 for the North Slope. And same story for the West Coast. Still in the mid 60s to around 70 for much of the interior, and Fort Yukon still looking like our warm spot at 73 degrees for Friday afternoon. Switching down to the southwest portion of the state for Thursday morning, lots of 40s in the forecast, a couple of exemptions for that being Meteorologist there at 37 degrees and down in the Pribilof Islands around 39 degrees. As we head into Thursday afternoon, temperatures mostly in the 50s. We do see a 60 here and there and a couple of 40s, but generally temperatures in the 50s, 53 there at Bethel, 57 at King Salmon for Thursday afternoon. Friday morning, not a whole lot of change. Still temperatures generally dipping down into the mid 40s with a couple of 30s as the exceptions. And as we head into Friday afternoon, maybe a couple of degrees of warming pretty far inland, but near the coast, we might even see a little bit cooler temperatures than on Thursday, with some more 40s with 49 there at Bethel for Friday afternoon. Finally, I wanted to take a look at our climate outlook for this summer. So these are going to be for June, July, and August all together. So For the entire state of Alaska, we're looking at increased chances of warmer than usual temperatures. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be hot the whole summer. That's not talking at all about how warm or how much above normal. But when you take all of the temperatures for June, July, and August of this year and average them together, the expectation is that that will end up being some degree above what it normally would be. And there's an even higher chance across the southern Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians than there is for the mainland, but everybody looking between about 40% and 60% chance of above normal temperatures. Again, when you average together that 3 months of temperatures at the end of the summer. Taking a look for the same period at precipitation, we've got the western half of the mainland stretching from the Alaska Peninsula all the way up to about Prudhoe Bay, and points west are favoring above normal precipitation for the same period being summer of this year, June, July, and August. And then the rest of the state, the eastern half of the mainland as well as the panhandle, looking like there's not very much signal. We're not seeing any color there, and that means that there's really just not enough for the forecasters of the Climate Prediction Center to go off of in order to create a good forecast. Or the other possibility is that the forecast is actually favoring something a little bit closer to normal for that period.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now for a look at your aviation forecast, starting with flying weather for Thursday morning. We've got quite a lot of IFR conditions along the north slope as well as much of the west coast, the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula, and out into the Aleutians. Also IFR conditions along the north side of Kodiak Island and up into the southeastern portion of the Kenai Peninsula. For Thursday afternoon, we do see some improvement along the west coast in Bristol Bay, as well as along the northwest coast to at least MVFR conditions, but those IFR conditions spreading across the rest of Kodiak Island and remaining for the YK Delta area, the Nome area, St. Lawrence Island, and the North Slope. For Friday morning, we have IFR conditions continuing for the North Slope, as well as the very western extent of the west coast and out into the Bering Sea. Improvement to MVFR for the Aleutians and VFR for most of the mainland as well as the Panhandle on Friday morning. Friday afternoon, we see IFR conditions spreading a little bit further across southwest up the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers, as well as IFR moving back into the western Aleutians and as well as the Chukchi Sea coast. Still VFR conditions for much of the mainland, the Alaska Peninsula, and the Panhandle, though. We do have a chance for thunderstorms across the southeastern mainland just north of the Wrangell Mountains on Friday afternoon. Pass conditions on Thursday at AKwx Pass, we're looking at MVFR in the morning, improving to VFR in the afternoon. Same thing at Adigan Pass with MVFR improving to VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill passes, both MVFR in the morning, improving to VFR on Thursday afternoon. And Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass, also MVFR in the morning, improving to VFR on Thursday afternoon. Isabel Pass looking VFR through the day on Thursday, as well as Mentasta Pass and Tanita Pass, both VFR on Thursday. Portage Pass looking like MVFR all day on Thursday, and Chilkoot and White Passes both VFR on Thursday. Our freezing level is a little bit chaotic for Thursday morning. We have our lowest freezing levels over the Chukchi Sea, about 2,000 feet, and then those freezing levels are getting higher as we head either east or south. So 6,000 foot freezing level going right across the middle portion of the mainland, stretching down through the Panhandle as well. 6,000 feet also coming through the Bering across the coastal southwest area and into the Alaska Peninsula. And then for the western Aleutians, 8,000 feet to even 10,000 foot freezing levels there. For icing on Thursday, we're looking at a large area of isolated moderate icing over the western 2/3 of the mainland. That's going to be mostly above 7,000 feet. And then also isolated moderate out over much of the Bering, but stay north of the Aleutians for the most part. That's going to be above 8,000 feet. Not much jet stream to talk about on Thursday. Just a small jet off the east coast of Russia at about 100 knots, and then 90 to 105 knots coming across the eastern Aleutians. But as we look into our 9,000 foot winds, we see our strongest winds in both of those same places just off of the southeast coast of Russia at 40 to 55 knots there, and out of the north over the Aleutians, out of the north at about 50 knots. We also have some increased winds over the Chukchi Sea and for the Chukchi Sea coast, 20 to 40 knots out of the southwest there, but light winds over much of the mainland as well as the panhandle at 9,000 feet. Very similar story at 3,000 feet. We have still a smaller area, but still about 20 knot winds for the Chukchi Sea coast, some 45 knot winds out of the west and northwest for the western Bering Sea, and then some increased winds out of the north for the Aleutians at 20 to 25 knots there. Still very light winds across the mainland and panhandle though. And finally, for turbulence, two areas of considerable moderate turbulence. We've got one area stretching across the northern Alaska Peninsula and into interior southwest. That's going to be considerable moderate turbulence below 6,000 feet. And then also another area over the southern Alaska Peninsula, stretching down into the eastern Aleutians. That's going to be considerable moderate turbulence below 5,000 feet. Stay tuned for more Alaska weather after this.
What we're looking at is a legacy of the Ice Age. Permafrost and methane is a time machine. So what we're going to do is walk back in time. We're going to see old carbon, old bones, old environments, and none of those are in equilibrium with today's climate, so that's the problem. That world doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't for 10,000 years. It was nicely and very delicately separated from this modern warmer climate by about this much moss. And when that moss goes away, whether for fire or for human disturbance or for warming, then all hell breaks loose.
Permafrost. It's maybe the part of the cryosphere that's most out of sight and mind. It's fascinating how it formed in the first place and how it got loaded with so much carbon. In a minute, we'll go back underground with Matthew Sturm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. But first, let's meet Peter Griffith, NASA's project manager for the Above campaign, which supports more than 70 science projects studying forest and tundra vegetation, wildfires, animals like birds, caribou, and Dall sheep, methane emissions from expanding northern lakes, and the impacts of climate change on people in Alaska, Canada, and around the world. Many of those projects have some direct connection to permafrost.
Permafrost is the hidden cryosphere. It's the permanently frozen soil that surrounds the Arctic, all across Alaska, northern Canada, and then across Eurasia. The ground has been frozen during the ice ages.
During the ice ages, there was not enough snowfall in the drier regions of Alaska and Canada to form glaciers there, so the land was suitable for vegetation.
What happened is that over thousands and thousands of years, all of that plant material got compacted and frozen every winter and buried and pushed down, so that today there's 300 feet deep of frozen water and dead plants and some pieces of dead animals too. Sometimes you find woolly mammoths in the permafrost. But most of it, of the organic matter as we call it in the permafrost, is frozen plant material.
Some of that plant material is now thawing and decaying, releasing its ancient carbon into the atmosphere, sometimes in the form of methane gas bubbling out of expanding northern lakes.
We started this field campaign because the Arctic is the part of the planet that is warming first and fastest. And there are consequences to this for permafrost. So during the Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, we're studying permafrost with people on the ground, from aircraft flying over the region, and also from satellites in space.
Another way to understand the permafrost is to take a walk below ground with Matthew Sturm and into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permafrost tunnel.
And they've dug this tunnel back into the side of a hill about 200 feet, and it goes sort of sloping down so that by the end of the tunnel you're about 100 feet underground, and you're surrounded by bones sticking out of the wall from the steppe bison and mastodons that are frozen in it. There's sticks that are 40,000 years old, that you can touch with your hand. There's grass that's still green, that's tens of thousands of years old because it got frozen, right away, and it's never lost the green color.
But as fascinating as it is to see these relics of an ancient era, or to see a tree split in half by thawing soil, or even to light a ball of methane on fire from under winter ice, at the end of the day, Peter and his colleagues want to know just how much organic matter is frozen in that permafrost, and how fast it might be released.
Currently, we think that there is something on the order of 2 to 3 times as much carbon locked up as frozen organic matter in permafrost as there is carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So releasing all of that organic carbon from permafrost into the atmosphere would be a real game changer. That would be a tremendous transformation of the planet's atmosphere. Now, the good news is that it would take a very, very long time for that to happen. However, we are warming the planet at a rate now that calls into question how quickly is that changing and what the consequences in the near future and in the far future are going to be.
You're in the middle of a field somewhere in California at 4 in the morning. It's sort of surreal in a way because you've put so much time into it for so long, and actually seeing it over there is like, whoa, it's a big deal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at your marine forecast. Taking a look at the sea ice edge to begin with, we're zooming in on the Arctic area today because that's really the only place where there is ice left. We've got some in the Bering, especially on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. That little bit in Norton Sound is the last of it in that area. It looks like it's probably right around or just below 80% concentration there, just over that little portion of the sound still. And then that clear area all the way up from the Bering Strait north into the Chukchi Sea is just going to continue to expand as we head forward in time and things continue to melt and deteriorate. Taking a look at our forecast for the southeast for Thursday, we've got winds generally out of the south and southeast, 15 to 20 knots across the Gulf and 10 to 15 knots for the inside waterways. We've got seas 6 to 7 feet for the Gulf and 2 to 3 feet for those inside channels. Into Friday, we've got winds changing direction a bit on us out of the northeast and north, with a little bit of northwest there in the eastern Gulf. Still 15 to 20 knots, still 10 to 15 knots for the inside waterways, and just a small increase in the seas to 6 to 8 feet for the Gulf on Friday. Taking a look at South Central for Thursday, in the Gulf, winds out of the east 15 to 20 knots. For Cook Inlet, a little bit more northerly flow, 15 to 20 knots, and seas for the Gulf 6 to 7 feet. We've got 3 to 5 feet for Cook Inlet on Thursday. Heading into Friday, a wind shift here as well to winds out of the west, pretty consistent 20 knots across the Gulf and 10 knots more out of the south for Cook Inlet on Friday. For Thursday, for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas, all the information is there. We had a little bit of an issue with our background image, so apologies for that today. We'll make sure that that gets in there tomorrow. But we're looking at westerly and northerly flow for this area on Thursday, 15 to 20 knots. We actually have some northeasterly flow on either side of Kodiak Island, and seas looking like 3 to 5 feet on the Bering Sea side and 6 to 8 feet on the Gulf side for Thursday. Heading into Friday, still mostly westerly flow, although a little bit more southwesterly for the Bering Sea side. 20 knots there, 15 knots on the Gulf side. Seas coming down on the Gulf side 4 to 6 feet, and actually coming up just a little bit on the Bering Sea side, 4 to 6 feet there as well. For Thursday, across the Aleutian chain, pretty much due westerly flow, 15 to 20 knots, a little bit of southwesterly flow, 25 knots for the western Aleutians. Seas pretty small, even for this time of year, 5 feet across the board for the Aleutians on Thursday. Heading into Friday, a little bit more variability in the winds, some southerly flow developing for the western Aleutians and southwesterly flow for the eastern Aleutians. 15 to 20 knots of wind across the board, and 4 to 6 foot seas, even 3 feet there on the south side of on Alaska, other side from Dutch Harbor there on Friday. For Thursday along the west coast, we have southerly and southwesterly flow, generally 10 to 15 knots closer to the coast, with 30 knots out in the open Bering, just in the area south of St. Matthew Island, that should be. About 1 foot of seas in Norton Sound, 4 to 5 feet closer to the coast, and then 6 to 7 feet as you get out into the Bering a little bit further. For Friday, still southerly to southwesterly flow, about 25 knots, with the exception being some lower winds in Norton Sound, about 15 knots out of the south there. Seas generally coming up near the coast 5 to 7 feet, and up to about 8 feet a little bit further offshore in the Bering. For Thursday, along the north side of the state, we're looking at 5 to 15 knots of wind out of the east for the North Slope, and some southerly flow from the Bering Strait north in the Chukchi Sea, 15 to 20 knots there. And for Friday, still 10 to 15 knots out of the generally southeast for the North Slope. Some mixed winds, a little bit lighter too for the Chukchi Sea on Friday, 10 to 15 knots. And recapping our weather for the next couple of days, on Thursday we have that chance of thunderstorms over the eastern interior near the Eagle area where the Yukon River crosses into Canada. Showers and rain for much of the western side of the mainland, and some showers for the Panhandle as well.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.